evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. Tonight, we talk about Laurent Gbagbo has so far been acquitted by the International Criminal Court. We are, of course, going to be telling you more on that in this edition of the news. Also ahead, we will be taking you to the southwest region of the country, precisely in Kumba, Meme Division, where a security meeting took place today. The question of demilitarizing the southwest region of the country was at the center of discussion. Plus, we are going to be talking about the protest demonstration in Bafang. What are the lawyers of Pierre Kwemo, that is the mayor of Bafang, that was the principal reason why local inhabitants in that part of the west region took to the streets? That was yesterday. What are the lawyers saying? We shall be getting more in this edition of the news. We shall be right back. Stay with us. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. We begin right away in Ivory Coast to talk about the International Criminal Court that has acquitted former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo of crimes against humanity in a verdict seen as a stunning defeat for the global body's prosecution for former head of state in the African continent. The court in The Hague found that prosecutors had not presented enough evidence to prove that Mr. Gbagbo and his former youth minister guilty of crimes including ordering rape, murder, prosecution, and other inhuman acts. The post-electoral violence left at least 3,000 deaths and some 500,000 displaced. That was in 2010 in Ivory Coast. That was the situation at the International Criminal Court this Tuesday. We, of course, will be telling you more on that in our subsequent newscast. We now continue with news in the country to talk about January 15th. That marks a significant date in the political history of Cameroon. It is a day when the nationalist Ernest Wanji, one of the leaders of the Union de Population du Cameroun, a left-wing pro-independence political party, was publicly executed. That was in Bafoussam West region. That was in 1971. He had also continued to resist the government of President Amadou Ahidjo. That was the first president of the Republic of Cameroon after independence in 1960. Innocent as it takes us back memory lane in the following report.
Ernest Wanji, born in 1924, was a teacher and a leader of the struggle for independence of Cameroon in the 1950s and who continued to resist the government of President Amadou Ahidjo after the country gained independence in 1960. He was captured in 1970, tried and condemned to death. On the 15th of January 1971, he was publicly executed in Bafoussam by firing squad. Born in Badoumla, Bana district in the Opankam, Ernest Wanji attended public school in Bafoussam and then l'École Première Supérieure de Yaoundé, where he obtained a diplôme de moniteur indigène in November 1943 and picked up a teaching job. In 1944, he joined the Union of Confederate Trade Unions of Cameroon. From 1944 to 1948, he taught at Edea. On October 7, 1948, he was posted to Chang. A month later, he was posted to Douala as director of the New Berbamleke Public School. Ernest Wanji, in 1948, still became a member of the Union of the Peoples of Cameroon, UPC, a left-wing pro-independence political party. 4 years later, he became vice president of the UPC. In September 1953, he was assigned to Dumé and Yoko in the Mbamankim. In December 1954, he was posted to Baturi, then Betwa. Finally, in January 1955, he was once again assigned to Douala. This was after he had attended the World Congress of Democratic Youth in China in December 1954. He had also traveled to Paris and Moscow. On July 13, 1955, when the French government dissolved the UPC by a decree for a series of rallies and strike organizations, most of the UPC leaders, including Ernest Wanji, moved to Kumba in the British-administered southern Cameroon to avoid being jailed by the colonial power. In 1957, under pressure from French, the British authorities in Western Cameroon deported Ernest Wanji and other leaders of the UPC to Khartoum, Sudan. He then moved into Cairo, Egypt, Conakry, Guinea, and finally to Accra, Ghana. After independence, they continued fighting Ahidjo's government, whom they considered to be a puppet of the French. In 1960, Ernest Wanji and others were exiled and isolated. President Ahidjo had declared Ernest Wanji a public enemy #1 when he secretly returned from Accra to Cameroon to work towards the overthrow of the Ahidjo regime. When things got sour, all efforts and that of Bishop Ndogmo Albert, then Bishop of Nkongsamba, to hide failed. On August 19, 1970, Ernest Wanji surrenders to the authorities near the town of Lum in an exhausted, hungry, tasty, and disoriented look. He was flown to Yaoundé, where he was detained. It was only in December 1970 that the 47-year-old teacher and politician was tried and condemned to death. He was executed by firing squads on January 15, 1971. He is remembered for fighting for the independence of Cameroon from the French colonial power.
That is Innocent Aze, taking a look at the journey of a hero of independence in Cameroon. That was in the 1960s. We now come back to the situation in Ivory Coast. Ivorians that took to the streets to celebrate the announcement by the International Criminal Court that hearing would continue tomorrow. But the International Criminal Court judges ruled on Tuesday, that was today, that he had no case to answer and ordered him to be immediately released. The International Criminal Court acquitted the Ivorian former president, who has been charged with crimes against humanity in connection with violence following the disputed 2010 presidential election that left some 3,000 people dead and 500,000 others displaced. The prosecutor said that Laurent Gbagbo clung to power by all means and charged him with 4 counts of crimes against humanity, murder, rape, and other forms of sexual violence, prosecution, and other inhuman acts. He denied all wrongdoings. As we announced in the headlines, we take you now to the southwest region of Cameroon. Chiefs in Meme Division are now unanimous, or are not rather unanimous, about the heavy military presence in the conflict-hit region during a security meeting that was chaired by the senior divisional officer for Meme Division, Tundong Chamberlain. Some of the traditional leaders in attendance said that peace could be restored in the southwest region if soldiers are pulled out and sent to their barracks. The view was contested by some who said that it may heighten the rate of insecurity in the region. These proposals, amongst many others, on how to resolve the Anglophone crisis were put together and would be forwarded to competent authorities, according to the senior divisional officer for Meme. The meeting was holding at a time when over 30 passengers transported on board 2 18-seater buses which left Kumba for Boya were held in the locality of Idiki and their phones and valuables seized. The passengers were later released by the gunmen, whose identity is still unknown. We cannot verify reports that Ambazonian fighters were behind the incident, but we are closely following up developments. We, of course, will be telling you more on that in our subsequent newscast. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the health condition of some Cameroonians. That's, of course, going to be in the second part of this newscast. But before that, we take a look at the difficulties of some internally displaced persons in Tiko, that is in Fako division of the southwest region of Cameroon. The people are in dire need of shelter and food. They have left their various homes and localities as a result of the Anglophone crisis. Davison Mamu tells us more from Limbe.
The people you find behind me are not foreigners. They are all Cameroonians. But they do have a new identity. They are called IDPs, internally displaced persons. They are mostly from the northwest and southwest regions, who of course have come here to seek refuge due to the ongoing Anglophone crisis that is hitting almost every part of the northwest and southwest region. But here in Tiko, the story is not different, as insecurity equally looms this environment, especially with workers of the Cameroon Development Corporation, the CDC. who of course for 8 months, many of them say they have not been paid. And things are getting more difficult and difficult every day.
It is so, we've been here like 7 months we already work. Pay no day. We don't get nothing for chop. And by the grace of God, we will live.
So at the rain house, landlord the work we say more come up for us. So at the time for best we say me take a like they will seriously cause that pay we will pay the house.
To the internally displaced persons, IDPs from other areas, their stories are pathetic and soul-touching as they recount their ordeals.
We come up for Moyo, come to be for bush for 2 months. I get 6 people there. So they born house. I don't even get the one clothes. I don't be for no nothing. So even something out there for chop. My picking there. They always sleep for different minds.
Now the gun shooting.
For side?
For Bamenda. Then I run come here because I get some of my brother where they stay for here. As I come for here now, we not even get place for sleep. We not even get team for eat and we not even get job. So we just struggle.
This is the situation here. Davidson Mine, Equinoxe TV, in Tico Subdivision, Fako Division, Southwest Region.
Those are some displaced persons there in Tico subdivision in Fako Southwest region, recounting their stories to Davidson Maimo. It was at the time when the CPP and Stand Up for Cameroun visited them to assist them. We, of course, will be telling you about the efforts of the CPP. That's going to be in our subsequent newscast, possibly tomorrow. We continue to talk about the Anglophone crisis, the ongoing crisis in the 2 Anglophone regions of the country that has so far resulted to the homelessness of hundreds of some nomadic community or individuals in nomadic communities in the 2 Anglophone regions of Cameroon, precisely in the locality of Banguren in Noon division of the West region. Let us take a look at their day-to-day difficulties with Immaculate Fogwe.
Kutaba is one of the towns in the Noon division, hosting hundreds of persons displaced by the Anglophone crisis. Most of the internally displaced persons are from the nomadic communities in the northwest regions and Banguren in the Noon division, hit by the socio-political crisis. They have been forced to seek refuge in Kutaba after abandoning their cattle rearing and farming activities for safety.
I'm here in Thai and I have been here for more than 3 months now with my family. There are about 9 people under my care and we are renting one room and a parlor for our stay.
The people have complained that they feel abandoned by the government of Cameroon. Mr. Madu Faid Ayuro, chief of the nomadic community in Jidango, says they cannot only depend on the efforts of men and women of goodwill to satisfy the daily needs of the displaced.
Nous avons rencontré beaucoup de difficultés par rapport aux réfugiés du nord-ouest, du sud-ouest.
We have faced a lot of difficulties as a result of the refugees coming from the northwest and southwest, and also those coming from Banguren. All the displaced from Banguren are now residing with me in Jidango. It is difficult to feed them, provide for them with shelter and cater for school-going kids. The community here has contributed sums of money for their upkeep, but right now we are unable to provide all their needs. Now calling on the government to see how they can be assisted and their problems addressed.
The low level. So having a housing of 8 people now is a difficult issue. So it is now not easy for us to even feed it 3 times a day as required by the standard. So we are wishing that the Cameroon government should do something and fast.
Statistics show that the West region is hosting tens of thousands of IDPs who fled violence and gunshots in the West-hit Northwest regions.
The population of Bafang in the West region says that Cam would not return to the locality if their mayor is not finally released. Protest demonstration continued today after their mayor was arrested, as they have continued to call for his liberation. It should be noted that Mayor Pierre Kwemo was questioned in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. That was a few days ago. The peaceful protest march, which began Friday, recorded a landmark turnout that was yesterday, as Mfomi Armstrong Sander tells us in the following report.
Manifestation in Bafang, Opankam Division, West Region of Cameroon, Monday, 14th of January 2019. Women and men, hands on their head, and others displaying placards with messages like "Free Pierre Kwemo. We are in a state of law. Do not hinder our development." The demonstrators in their numbers were demanding the immediate and unconditional release of the mayor of Bafang, Pierre Kwemo, arrested on Friday, 11th of January 2019 in Yaoundé, Cameroon's political capital. Circulation in the town of Bafang was perturbed as commercial motorbike riders joined the protest demonstration in their numbers. Amidst the crowd, filtered religious sounds and cries from the troubled population who say their mayor must be freed. Supporters of the mayor say Pierre Kwemo is a mayor par excellence whose development agenda has greatly transformed the Bafang Municipal Council area. They say the mayor's freedom is not only demanded by members of his Union of Socialist Movements, UMS political party for which he is president, but by the entire population of the Opankam division, West region of Cameroon.
Le même Kwemo, c'est un monsieur qui a toujours exercé pour sa population. Il est tellement réclamé. Actuellement, ce n'est uniquement son parti qui lui réclame, c'est toute la population du Haut-Cam.
Pierre Kwemo was arrested on Friday, 11th of January 2019 in relation to a land dispute in Yaoundé. He would later be moved to the Kondenge prison where he suffered a malaise and was immediately taken to the Yaoundé General Hospital for treatment. According to an ordinance from the Mfundi High Court, Mr. Pierre Kwemo is accused of depredation by ban, following Article 236 of Cameroon's Penal Code, a crime enough to put him in detention until the truth is established.
And of course, as we heard in that report there by Informing Armstrong Sanda, Pierre Kwemo is the president of Union, the Mouvement Sportif of Lum, that is UMS of Lum. The supporters and business persons in Lum are worried about his arrest. That is the arrest of the president of UMS of Lum. Just like the supporters, business persons believe that the locality is going to be badly affected without Elite One football championship. Details in the following report.
Since the arrest of Pierre Kwemo, president of Union the Mouvement Sportif of Lum, activities in the locality found in the Mongo division seems to have met with a natural death. The arrest of Pierre Kwemo, supporters of the team say, has actually made them frustrated and worried. When we heard about the arrest of Pierre Kwemo, we became too worried. This is so because we don't know how the team will cope this year, knowing that UMS is a very popular team here in Lum. Whenever UMS had a home match, it is not only the fans who benefit, but also business operators. Patrice Njonto is a business operator in Lum. His arrest made everybody to be panic-stricken since we don't know how the players will be motivated. UMS that has made the town of Lum to be popular in Cameroon as a result of their performances in top-flight football. Many are now afraid that the arrest of their president might demoralize the troop this football season. A notable in the locality of Lum, Jean Manga, is also worried. We are in a panic situation and even frustrated because on the field we don't even know if these boys are going to play this football season. Everyone was in panic when the news dropped about his arrest. Many supporters are now asking if the Lum Municipal Stadium, the official playground of the club, will still remain the melting point on every match day. Union de Mouvement Sportif of Lum were crowned champions of Cameroon during the 2015-2016 football season.
And that report brings us to the end of this first segment of the news. Time for us to meet our guest tonight. We shall be talking health. Stay with us. Good evening to you once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in the second segment of the news. We are being joined by the program manager of the non-communicable disease. He is in charge of the non-communicable disease known as the NCDs in the Cameroon Baptist Convention Health Services, Mr. Mbizernue Ferdinand. I hope I've not distorted the pronunciation of your name.
You tried your best.
To you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Thank you so much, Mimi. It's nice to have health as a very important topic to discuss tonight.
We should be thanking you for coming. Tonight we are going to be talking health, as I earlier indicated. The non-communicable diseases, they are responsible for 70% of annual global death and some 35% of death in Cameroon today. Good, of course, as we said earlier, you are in charge of the non-communicable disease prevention and control at the CBC Health Services. It seems to be a very, very neglected health aspect in Cameroon today. Tell us, what is actually non-communicable diseases?
Actually, you're right in that there's really been neglected per se, because it's until recently the global community did not really create a framework through which these diseases can actually be handled in the population. And that was really because the statistics were not really that clear, and the links were not really that clear. So by 2008, there was a clear release by what we call the Lancet study that realized that up to 40 million deaths each year were due to these NCDs, and that made up 70% of annual global deaths. So clearly that was an issue. But this is the interesting part, is that these diseases are linked by 4 major risk factors which can cause any of these diseases. So NCDs, non-communicable disease, always called NCDs, are simply diseases that cannot be transmitted from one person to another. So they are auto-developed, and a person who has an NCD cannot pass on that NCD to another person. Examples of NCDs include cancers, which I'm sure very many people are familiar with.
Certainly.
You have diabetes, you have chronic respiratory diseases, and cardiovascular diseases. These are the 4 major categories of NCDs that, for the purpose of global focus, the global community, the WHO, has really been able to put out as what we should address as non-communicable diseases.
What are some of those factors that can expose an individual to NCDs?
So there are 4 major modifiable risk factors for developing NCDs. The first one is tobacco use. The second is unhealthy diet or poor diets. And the third one is alcohol misuse. And the last one is physical inactivity. We also have other risk factors that, such as stress, but also you have what we call non-modifiable risk factors, such as age, gender, or genetics. So those, we don't call them causes, we call them risk factors, because they are things that affect our environment as well as our lifestyle, and so they end up producing those NCDs within our bodies.
Now we are looking at the statistics, which are quite shocking at the level of Cameroon, 35%, and according to some researchers it is even more. Tell us what you've been able to do so far, and are you confident that NCDs, the government is actually fighting against NCDs in the country? Do you have that impression that the government is fighting, has a program to fight against NCDs in the country?
So actually in 2013, the government established an NCD unit at the Ministry of Public Health, which is quite something really good. But as the CBC Health Services, we actually help provide the healthcare as part of the national need to have healthcare for the population, and therefore we have so far in 2013 also we were able to realize the need, and then our Director of Health Services, Professor T. Pius, was able to set up a committee that worked to create this NCD program, which started in 2016. Now, by 2016, one of the key things we started doing is that we created what you call the Know Your Numbers initiative, which seeks to help the population to check their vital health numbers. Non-communicable disease by nature, they develop slowly and silently inside the people. And therefore, you need to constantly always be checking those vital health numbers in order to know exactly your level of risk and to be able to take measures. So we've been promoting that under the tagline of Know Your Numbers. But also we've been doing a lot of advocacy to really cause, especially the government, to come up with a framework that allows us to truly handle the issue of NCDs in Cameroon. We have a lot of needs and a lot of challenges at this stage in addressing NCDs. Looking at their causes, you discover there's a lot of alcohol use in Cameroon, there's tobacco use in Cameroon. All of those factors that generate these diseases are so present, and we expect that there should be more effort by the government and in fact all stakeholders to actually battle NCDs.
And that is just one of the challenges that you face, certainly, as the CBC is equally well implanted in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon, precisely in the Northwest region. Has it been easy doing this advocacy program that you're talking about?
Definitely, it's when you look at implementing the NCD prevention and control program, we have had a good number of challenges in our implementation, even including the advocacy part. But in implementing the program, within the past 2 years that the program has existed, we have faced challenges, and practically we have people, for example, who need to come to the hospital to access healthcare, particularly maybe to the diabetes clinic, but they have not been able to come because of the insecurity, or because of maybe the road has been blocked and they can't come to the hospital.
Or
for example, in
Bansor
Bansor Baptist Hospital, or because there's ghost town. Actually, we actually had a situation where somebody simply just dies because it was ghost town and they couldn't move to come to the hospital. And so that's just one of the challenges we have had. But we also reach out to the community, and because of insecurity, it has not been possible for some of our initiatives to be able to move into the communities to reach to the people. And therefore, the overall effect is that people are not able to get access to health care because of the insecurity that prevails. Quite a good number of people are not able. I'll tell you that someone who has diabetes and is constantly coming to the hospital to take their medication or to do very key tests for their kidney that they're supposed to do maybe once in a few weeks or once in a few months or once in a year, because of the situation, and they cannot come to the hospital, they are not able to do those tests. Nobody knows the status of their kidneys, nobody knows the status of their health, and what happens is nobody can treat them, nobody can help them.
Is
and
it
so
possible to actually avoid ICDs? Is it possible?
NCDs, yeah.
As an individual, is it possible to avoid them? How can you do that?
So, when we talk about avoidable risk factors, we're actually talking about the fact, or modifiable risk factors, we're talking about the fact that someone can actually take steps to prevent themselves from having these diseases. So, avoidable burden of NCDs is what we really want to avoid, and therefore it's possible. To prevent NCDs, we need to be physically active, we need to engage in exercise, we need to stop the use of tobacco, we need to stop the use of alcohol, and we need to be able to make sure that we think about what we eat. And it's not everything that is sweet in the mouth that is good for the body, and not everything that is good for the body is sweet in the mouth.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We hope to have you some other time again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too for your time. To our viewers, it was equally a pleasure having with us in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Wishing you a blessed stay in the company of our programs. Until we meet again, goodbye.